we're going to build upon some of the things we've already covered. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import a thick and thin brush stroke. Import file, like such. And I'm going to set up my composition, 1920, 1080, 24 frames, 10 seconds is fine. And I'm going to bring my brush stroke into there. I'm going to position it so that's fully in there. Reminder, you can always zoom in and zoom out with there. This is your preview resolution. If your computer's running slow, you can lower it. This right here turns off and on the alpha. This is a reminder of trim paths, alpha mats, and looking at things as more than just geometric shapes. So I'm going to put a solid behind this so we don't have to look at the alpha transparency because it's pretty obnoxious. So let's pick a nice soothing color, put this at the bottom. And that's a bit harsh, so let me desaturate it a little. Save myself some time here. Okay, perfect. I'm happy with that. All right, so I don't want anything selected because I'm not going to want a mask to be drawn on the image. I'm just going to follow the shape of the stroke like such, and I'm not going to give it a fill. I'm going to change the color of the stroke so it's easier to see. And I want it to be wider than the full brush stroke. And I also want it to go a little bit past where that brush stroke goes. Like that. Okay. So we've got our shape layer and the stroke, and now I'm going to add a trim path to it. Add trim paths. And I'm going to want it to go from left up towards the right. So that's going to be animating the end because this is my start, the first point I made, and the last point I made is the end. So click the stopwatch. I've got the playhead where I want the motion to start. Move the playhead, make a change. Easy ease my keyframes. Go to my speed graph. And remember, you don't want to move the yellow squares up or down. You just want to move the influence handles, these little yellow balls. And this is how you zoom in and out of your timeline. So let's take a look at our motion. Like that. Perfect. So next, I'm going to use this trim path as an alpha matte over this image. Remember, you always put the matte on top of what you want to reveal. And it is always going to be one layer revealing one layer. So I've got my matte on top. Here's the image to be revealed. I'm in my switches. These little check boxes are switches. I want to be inside of modes. And so for this layer, I go to the track matte and I choose alpha matte. It's going to use the shape above it as the alpha matte. And there we have our motion. Now, this is what I'm driving home tonight. Yes, I used this weird looking shape path to get the trim path effect, to use as an alpha matte, to get this paint stroke to draw on. That's the workflow that was fastest for me. It looks like the stroke is being brushed on. There's the trim path. Okay? So think of that. It's like it's not just a geometric shape. You can use it as a matte to reveal something, to push this a little bit further. Because remember, it's always about trying to push your motion design little by little. I'll grab this, and hopefully it is transparent. Here we go. I'm going to import my brush. And I'm going to rotate it 180. And let's get rid of that white. Let's try extract. Get rid of it. And I'm going to adjust the white point. Okay, that's good enough for this. Now I'm going to scale it up so it's the right size. Let me rotate it a little bit. So I'm going to use this to push my animation. And that means it's got to be pretty close, matching the size of the stroke that it's actually making. So that's one thing to consider. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my anchor point to the end of the brush. Right there, the center. So I'm going to be animating the position and the rotation. Let's go back to the beginning. Move forward a little bit. And then I'm going to try and match this as best I can. By following along. Adding the brush will, see right there, will push this and make it look more deliberate. So that's another thing to consider. Like, yes, you can have the stroke come on, but if you've got the brush happening as well, that's going to make it even better because it's got a reference for what's creating it. So think of those things. What's causing the motion, and should it be following along with the motion? And I'm just roughing this out pretty quickly, not spending too much time on it, but I'm just gradually going through. And as I found out, if you leave a comment on the video, I will see the comment, but the chat function is not working. So if you do have a question, leave a comment on the video. So now I'm going to easy ease all this. See, like that. What's causing the stroke is the paintbrush. So I put it in there and it helps sell the effect of why that paint stroke is even happening. Just think of these little things that can add to your scene. All right, little by little, pushing it. I did the stroke with the trim path, then I made the alpha matte. Then I animated the brush stroke to follow along with the paint that's coming in. And you just go little by little and you make sure that you're ahead. Like that's a little bit ahead of the brush. I don't want that, but I'm using it as an example of what to look out for. And I would have subtracted this better in Photoshop before using it. But one of the benefits of what I did here is this is picking up the color of the background, so it's helping it blend into the scene. Think about how things are coming into the scene. Think about their scale in relation to everything else in the scene. This brush head needs to be at least the width of the brush stroke that it's creating for it to look and make sense. So I hope all of that makes sense. That's the first part of tonight. Adding the elements that will get your motion looking the best. You know, like the brush helps sell this, making sure it matches everything else. Watch when you're combining non-realism and realistic elements, okay? If you're going to go photorealistic, do photorealistic for as much as you can. If you're going to do abstract for as much as possible. You want your piece to be coherent and make sense. The next thing I'm going to do is do a little example here before I jump into the big part for tonight. I'm going to bring in my leaf next. And I'm going to make a new comp for it by clicking there. Now, if you don't have a leaf, you can just watch what's happening. I'm going to put this color in the background so we've got something to look at rather than the transparent alpha grid. Okay. What I'm going to want is I'm going to want to have 4 leaves going across this screen. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the anchor point at the bottom. I'm holding down Command or Control to snap it. I'm using the pan behind tool. Now I'm going to make sure I've got enough room for these 4 leaves that are going to fit. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So I'm going to grab the last one, move it over here. select all of them, and let's try something different tonight. Let's try going align, the align window, distribute layers off their center. So now everything is evenly spaced out, and I've got my 4 leaves. I named my 4 leaves. Each one is going to be a different animation technique to do the same thing. I'm going to want the leaf to visually grow from the bottom to the top. For the first leaf, I'm going to do what we did with the brushstroke and make a trim path. And it's wider than the leaf, and it's longer than the leaf at the top and bottom. So I will call this matte. And as you can see, they're not in the right order in the window, but that's fine. All right, so I've got my matte. I'm going to make a trim path. And I'm going to animate the end, like such. Go forward a little bit, like that. Now all I have to do is set this leaf to an alpha matte. And that's my first one. That's using a trim path, okay? Now, since that's just moving straight up and down, where's my linear wipe? Right here at the beginning. I could throw a linear wipe on this leaf over here. And I'm going to move my transition along a little bit. Now I'm just going to fix the angle and see if it's going from top to bottom. Here we go. So if this is 0, let's try minus 180. And let's test it out. Now it's going like it's growing from the top to the bottom. So I'm going to set my transition animation. And you'll notice the trim path is animating the exact same as the linear wipe. However, with the linear wipe, I can feather it. So instead of having that hard edge, I've got a soft edge. That's the difference between the trim path and the linear wipe. Now, for overshoot, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale this one non-uniformly. Along the y-axis. So I've got my keyframes. And in addition to that, I'm going to use the inertial bounce expression right here. Remember, when you're grabbing an expression off the internet, you want all the line breaks to match. And you don't need to get the description of what's making it work. So we'll try this. Since I'm adding an expression to my keyframes, I hold down Alt or Option. I click in there. I paste in my expression. And there's my overshoot. Now for the final leaf. Grow through ground. I'm going to do just a position. And I'm going to work backwards for this. So for the first one, I'm going to move until it's all the way past where it grows, like that. And I'm going to use an alpha matte for that, but in a different way. You'll see in a second. Okay, so this is pretty much lined up. So now you'll only see the top part. So I'll set the image below. So what you'll notice is now this looks like it's pushing up from the ground. Okay? the way the leaf would be growing. And I'm going to easy ease this. So let's try and push this one step further. I'm just going to grab this pile of dirt here, bring it in. Remember, you could also double click in the empty part of your project panel. Scale is important. Put this at the bottom. I'm actually going to put the dirt above it all. Throw a extract on it. There we go. Let's try this right here. Now let's take a look at all our different leaves doing the same thing, but with 4 different looks. This one is a linear wipe with some feathering to it. This is scaling up on the Y only with some inertial bounds. This is a trim path without any feathering. And this one is a position animation, making it look like it's popping up out of the soil. They're all roughly doing the same thing, but I found 4 different ways of doing it. So, Ellen, can you see the difference between all of them? There's more than one way of doing things, and some things are more appropriate. Like in my personal opinion, the one I think is most appropriate is this one on the end with the pile of dirt, where it's growing through the soil the way that it would be doing it. But if it's coming off of a leaf, growing off of a vine, maybe this one with the inertial bounce on it would look best. Think about the situation for your motion and where it's going to be coming out of. If it's growing off a vine, this would look pretty good. If it's pushing up out of the soil, this would work better. I'd maybe even add a little bit of overshoot or something like that. And since I got a little bit of time, I'm going to push this a little bit further. So there's the leaf, right? Let's see, which one is it? It's that layer right there, grow through ground. I'm going to try CC bend to make it look like it's swaying in the wind a little bit. CC bender. Okay, so once it's roughly up right here, remember top, I click my crosshairs, base, it's the bottom. So now I can add an expression in the amount, and I'll do a wiggle. And let's say twice a second, comma, 25. Click out of it and take a look. See? Look at that little bit of extra life that was added from that expression. That helps sell it even more. Can I keep pushing this design? Did I do enough? Is it doing what it's supposed to be doing? These are things all motion designers should be thinking when they're animating every little aspect of something. I got all 4 of these in a very short amount of time, and I'm showing you 4 different ways of doing something. And like I keep saying, expressions will save you a lot of time. Anything with a stopwatch, you can put an expression on. I didn't have to keyframe the wiggle on that leaf to make it look like it's blowing in the breeze. I used the expression in the amount on the bender. I used the expression for overshoot to get that little bit of bounce and playfulness to this. The other 2 just show you the difference between the same technique, but one of them I was able to feather, where the other one I cannot. So always just look at this and think about it, saying, is there another way of doing it that might work better for this situation? Because, like I said, I think this last one works the best. So, and you know what? When I'm doing this lecture another year or 2 from now, I might have thought of a 5th way of bringing this leaf in. It never ends. You're always learning. And once we do particle systems, then you'll see another use for this leaf. All right, so I'm going to stop that, hit save. Next week, I'll be doing zoom for the next few weeks instead of YouTube. I know I'm going to be designing this for motion, so I'm going to use the HD template. So this part will be thinking through your motion design in Illustrator. I'm going to try and find something with serifs plus thick and thin. And I'll explain why in a second. Okay, here we go. Let me scale this up. All right. So this, we'll just call this the arm. This arm of the X is thinner than this one. So I've got a thick arm, a thin arm, plus I have serifs, plus there's a curve to these serifs, okay? So I'm going to call this... One second, let me click out of there. I'm going to make a... design my logo real quick. And obviously your logos will be a lot nicer, but this is going to be used for the purpose of bringing in multiple elements. All right. So I'm going to roughly center this. And reminder, this black line is action safe. This first green line is title safe. So we'll pretend this is my studio logo. X Studio, very simple. I'm going to do save as. And I can send all these files to everyone after I'm done teaching because I'm making a folder for it. So that you can play along at home as well. Because I hear that's what all the cool kids are doing. All right. Now, if I do trim paths on this shape, it's not going to go well. Here's why. If I make this a little thicker to draw in this arm right here, I'll reveal parts of the thinner X behind it. So I've got to separate this arm and that arm. That's the first part. Additionally, these curved serifs are going to need to be separated. And this is going to be driving it all home. Animation hierarchy. What comes in what order, and how it's going to come in. What I'm going to plan on doing is I'm going to come down diagonally with the thick stroke. Then have the thin stroke come in. Then my serifs, I can have this top one come in left to right. This bottom one come in right to left. And this one, if this one came in left to right, I can have this one come in right to left. And the final serif, I'll have scale out in both directions at the same time just to give a little, flair. And while we're talking about logos, let's add some color so it's not so boring. And I can change this secondary font. And we'll shrink it down a little bit. So now I've got contrast with serifed, non-serifed, black and white, color. So there's a little bit more interest here. So I've got to get this artwork ready for After Effects. This is my secondary type. Let's go to layers. I'm going to click the plus page down here, right next to the trash can, get a new layer. The little blue square, I can just drag up there. And let's rename this layer. Like that. All right, now my X, I'm going to need 1 piece, 2 piece, and then 4 serifs. That's 6 duplicates. Let's call this X. So if I need 5 more duplicates to duplicate this layer, I think I can just drag it to the plus. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, That's 5, and it should be the last one. So let's hide everything. This first one is just going to be the crossbar, okay? So the way I do this is I make my path, hit the enter key to get out of it, and let's, you know what? Instead of a path, let's delete that. Let's do a rectangle. Okay, so there's my rectangle. And now I'm going to switch it around. Let's rotate it to match the angle. And then I'm going to scale it out. If I hold down Alt or Option, it'll get both edges at the same time, or all 4 edges, depending upon where you're clicking and dragging from. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now let's shrink it down a little because it's too thick. Make it just a little thicker. And that should be pretty good. Let's also see if I can grab this edge. This one, can I lock that? Okay, good. That's going to make my life a lot easier. Now I can get that and really dial this in. Precision work is not exciting to watch, but it's good to learn because I don't want to chop off too much of that serif. That's why I've got to get more precise. Okay. I got to make this a outlines. So I'm going to have to do that for all the other ones too. Sec. So I see everyone in the chat. The next few weeks are going to be on Zoom, so that you can talk right away while you've got a question. Okay, so now this is going to work. So now that I made it outlines, now I can click off the serifs and the parts that I don't want. Like that. Hide that. Okay, so that bar is done. Now let's get the next one. It's just going to be the thinner one. So to speed things up, this time I'm going to use the pen tool. Okay, so I'm going to select both of those. Get my shape builder. If you hold down Alt, you can delete things. If you hold down Shift, you'll add them together. So I'm holding down Alt to delete those parts. So I've got my 2 bars. Now it's just the serifs. And for the serifs, I can do that pretty easily with just the rectangle here. So I'm going to go back to my shape builder, hold down Alt, get rid of that. Now I'll get the this one next. Like that. Select both of them. Shape builder tool again, hold down Alt. There's that. Almost done. Now I'm going to do this one next. Select them both. Shape builder, hold down Alt to delete the parts I don't want. There's my serif. And it's just that final one down there in the corner. Select them both. Shape builder, hold down Alt. There we go. All right, so now everything's separated out. Now I can hit save, close it, go back into After Effects. And I'm going to give this file to everyone. Again, like I said, it's the same idea, just done 4 different ways. Linear wipe with a feather, scale up on the Y with the inertial bounce expression. This one is a trim path as an alpha matte. And this one is a position with an alpha matte and a little bit of wiggle on the effect for bender in the amount. And all that's at the beginning of the video. So now, this first comp, we're going to name it Paintbrush. In here, I was talking about having elements tie in with each other. Like this paintbrush, the brush head had to be the width of the stroke, and having the paintbrush gives motivation for what's creating the paint stroke. Thinking through your designs. This would look totally different without the paintbrush causing the paint to happen. And we did a little bit of puppet pinning in lab last week. A little bit of puppet pinning or bend to this would really help push that as well. All right, so this is the home stretch. All right, here we go. Now for the Xstudio logo, I'm going to go File, Import, File. Click one time. I know I misspelled it. That's fine. Import as Composition Retain Layer Sizes. Hit Import. So there is my logo. Here's all my pieces. So I can now animate these in as I need to. And remember, an alpha matte is one layer revealing one layer. I just got to make sure that the stroke is wider than that letter. And since we separated out all of the layers, we don't have to worry about this revealing something ahead of time. Now I add my trim path to it. And I'm also only going to do this once and just keep reusing it. I'm going to animate the end. Let's say we do that. Move it up. Easy ease it. And a reminder, you do not move the yellow square up and down. You move the yellow influence handle. Zoom out my timeline. There we go. Good. I'm going to set this to alpha matte. There's our first part of the letter coming in. Now I'm going to duplicate this. Put it above here. And I can now rotate it like that. Let's, there we go. I'm going to scale it up a little bit. Nope, not going to scale it. I'm using the pen tool to quickly edit the path and the point rather than clicking on the path deep inside here. Okay, so that's going in the motion I want it. I can set this to an alpha matte. Now I'm going to hit the U key to show my keyframes. I'm going to slide this layer a little bit So that comes in, and then this will come in. And I'll have it come in a little bit sooner. Just as, my personal taste. All right. We got all that happening. So next we'll think about our serifs. I said this one's going to be first. So I'm going to grab my first trim path, Command D to duplicate it. I'm just going to rotate it and then reposition it. And I'm just going to grab the pen, click there and change that. Okay, happy with that. And let's see if it's going in the direction left to right I want. There we go, good. And I just set the one below it as an alpha matte. And when do I want this serif to come in is up to me. So I'm going to have it come in just a little bit after the stroke comes down like that before it reaches the bottom. So now I can duplicate this, put it with the next one down at the bottom. And if I want this to come in the other direction, I'll just rotate it. That, okay, good. Set that to an alpha matte. And then I'll slide that down the timeline a little bit. Let's see when that's going to come in. Now, I don't want this serif to come in before it reaches the end. That's like the only thing that would look accidental. I could probably even have this first one come in a little sooner. Nope, wrong one. It's this one right here. Like that. That's looking better. We're almost done. So the next one I think is up here. So I hit Command D, duplicate. Yep, right there. I could add expressions to these trim paths if I wanted. Remember, it's one layer reviewing one layer. Okay, so right after that comes in, I'm going to slide this a little bit closer. Set the trim path, goes in like that. And then the last one, like we said, I'm going to scale out from both of them. From the middle. Oops. So I'll show you the difference with that. Let me just make sure okay, that's all good. And I'll have this come in about there, let's say. So instead of trim paths, I'm going to scale it out from the center. And we'll set the alpha matte for that. Like that should come in a little sooner. That. And let's have this come in a little bit, end a little earlier. Like that. All right. There's our logo coming in. Everything's coming in fairly decent. Now, the word studio, still there. This is where we want it to end up. And I'm going to stop this lecture here because it's 7. And we'll wrap up this part on Tuesday. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be adding texture, pre-composing, and using some more complex masks to get a more well thought out logo animation. But you can see how having the different elements come in at different times gives it that amount of character, like such. So we're going to push that even more next week. And now it is lab time. So if anyone has anything to show me, type G in the chat for Google, and I'll pull up your work in Google. So I just hit the U key to collapse everything. Okay, great. Yep, this is the new file. Excellent. Let's make it a little bit bigger and have a look. So I fixed the anchor points. And then I threw a wiggle expression on just to save some time. I've got that interest. Now, you know, the wiggle is saving us a ton of time here. Let's take a look at the shoelaces, shall we? Let's try turbulent displace. If everyone can hear me, type Y for yes. So let's see if anyone can hear me. Okay, good, good. All right, you can hear me, great. All right, so we've got turbulent displace on the shoelaces. And you can see too much is going to be too much. So it's the size that I'm worried about. So we're not going to do too much with the size. I'm not going to change the offset. Let's try the evolution. I'm going to click here. Let's try time asterisk 100. And then we'll give it a little bit of positive amount and a little less size. Now let's see what happens. It's a little too subtle. So for the evolution, let's try 300. See, now that's a little too much. Now we're starting to get something. So that means we're on the right track. Let's try 150. That's a little better. Look at that. So it's about trying different things. Wiggle is a useful expression. So is time, asterisk, and then a number. All I did for here was I figured out how much turbulent amount and size I want, and then I put the expression in the evolution. And you can copy and paste all this stuff into your other legs. But look at that, just from like a few minutes worth of work. So I hope that gave you some ideas, Sarah, on ways of saving time while still adding life to your character. A little bit of wiggle on the two different parts of the leg, a little bit of turbulent displace on those shoelaces, and you'll have something really nice. I'll give you this for reference. Do you have any other questions? Everything else is looking fantastic. Like I said, time, asterisk, and then a number. That's going to keep the evolution moving. So that's... I'll show you what it means. All right, great. So I'm going to close this, and then I'll show everyone what I mean by that. Because the golden rule of motion design and multimedia is show, don't tell. So here I am showing. All right, let's put a solid in. And I'll put some fractal noise in it. All right, now if I hit the spacebar, nothing's happening. Now let's watch our evolution. I'll put that same expression in. Alt-click time with the asterisk, 150, click out of it. Now look what's happening. It's going to constantly keep this moving on that layer. So it's going to evolve this and keep it moving without any keyframes. That's basically what the time expression does. If anyone else has anything to show me, type G in the chat for Google. And let's play around with this, because that's what LabTime is all about, as we've found out by now. I'll keep messing around while I'm waiting, and hopefully it inspires some people. Let's do dynamic. Spline. And let's try the scale. Make it larger. Okay. Increase the complexity. This almost looks like nerves inside of a body at this point. Let's increase that contrast. And all this was done with 0 keyframes. So we've got this. And I close the timeline because I'm a silly person. There we go. I'm going to pre-compose this. I'll just call it map. All right. So let's take a look at that leaf we had earlier. Bring it in here. Hide the map. Scale it up to about there. All right. Now let's do a displacement map. Right there. We'll put that on the leaf. And we've already pre-composed this. So we're going to choose for our displacement map, the map. Now we're starting to get some displacement. I can choose how much and in what direction. Like that. So I'm just using the grayscale values of that displacement on the leaf just for some fun. You can do it more subtle or more extreme. It's really all up to you as the designer what you want to do. If anyone else has anything to show me, type G in the chat for Google. So let's hide this leaf. Actually, let's get rid of it. Let's get rid of the stroke on this. Fill. All right, now, so the displacement map on this shape, choose the map and the effects. And you'll see how this is really influencing the geometric shape a lot more. Like such. So in addition to that, I could throw roughen edges on my shape. Now put that above my displacement map. Like such. And let's keep the party going because that's what LabTime's about. I'm going to add wiggle paths to my shape. And let's hide these two. There's our wiggle paths. So let's mess around. We want one smooth. There we go. So we did that. Now let's look at with the roughen edges. Okay, that's happening. Now the displacement map. And on top of that, let's throw turbulent displace. And we'll put the time expression in the evolution. Time, asterisk, let's do 200. Click out of it. Now we've got something wild happening. And this is all with no keyframes. So let's lower the amount. Lower the size. Reel it in a little bit. Okay. Now let's try. And instead of a solid, we'll give it a gradient. See what's happening there. Okay, now let's see. Here's the controller for the gradient. There we go. I'm starting to get something interesting. I can rotate it as well. I'm liking that. Now that we've got some tonal value to this, let's throw a glass effect on it. And I'm going to go back to 8 bits per channel because that will not work with this effect. I'm using the map again. So now we're getting something completely different. Now that we've got some tonal value happening, I can also colorize this if I want with the light. Mess around with my shading. Till I dial in and get the look I want. Like such. And that just started out as a simple shape layer. We've added a lot of depth to it now with this extra shading. Now for the fun of it, let's kick it up a notch. I'm going to pre-compose this, because that's what LabTime's all about. Me just showing you things that we haven't covered yet. I'm going to try and remove this color here. There we go. So now I've got just that happening. Looking more deliberate without that negative space in it. So now I can throw a tint on here and colorize it. So if I make black, red, I've got a completely different look from the elements that I removed. At this point now, it's starting to look like water in the moonlight. Almost. So again, that just started out as a simple shape layer with no keyframing and just a little bit of experimenting. I'll put this in there for everyone to have too. All right, let's keep pushing this because we've got some time. Oh, you know what? I know what I'm going to try. Let's try lens on it. Let's get rid of that. Neat to try, though. Remember, if you have anything you want to show me, type in G for Google. Now I added a little bit of drizzle to it. So if I want to go back and make it look more like water rather than this oily slime, I could do that. Oh, nice. Oh, and you got the expression going on there. Now it looks like that's there. Here's this. There's that. Okay, that's that. Okay. All right, all right, all right. I got it. I see what's happening here. All right. One sec. Okay. So watch what's going to happen here coming up. That's looking great. Now watch the next word come out. See how your texture is moving and not following the text? You're using this as an alpha matte. All you have to do is take your texture and pick whip it to that layer. Why is that still doing that? That's weird. It is parented to that. That's so bizarre. Oh, you know what? Unless, let me hit U. No, there's no keyframes on it. There's no keyframes on that either. Interesting. Keyframes are in there. Okay. So let's try this. I'm going to copy this, paste it inside here. And put the alpha matte on here. It's still doing it. That's wild. Oh, wait, because I did not parent it. Let's just pick here. I'll parent it. Now the texture is staying still. Okay, so moving the texture into the pre-comp and then parenting it, that fixed that issue. Watch out for that little bobble there. It's a little too extreme for the sword. Everything else is coming along great. So the sword right here, you, okay. It's good to hear. $579. Maybe all we have to do to fix this is spread this out a little bit. I'm holding down Alt, and then I just move those manually. I think it's a little too much overshoot if it's impacting with something. So if it's going 620, yeah, see right here at the peak, it's going to 673. Let's check out your speed graph. Yeah, see, this is value graph. the speed graph. That's what's causing it right there, that spike in your speed graph. I wonder why it's jumping so much there. Let's go back here. What if we had it not dip down so far? It's still doing it. That's bizarre. But it's looking really good. Just watch out for that overshoot there. The rest is coming along very nice. You got great alpha mats working. You're using effects. You're using expressions. You've got a good animation hierarchy happening. Wait, now where'd the other part go? There we go. It's looking pretty nice. And this adds to the little bit of life. So we just got to figure out a way of having the studios come on. And it's looking really nice. Very happy with it. You've clearly pushed your work a lot over the past few weeks. It's looking really sharp. While I'm here, let's see when the first assignment's due. Sound effects will really push everyone's work. A little bit of music. Week 2. Due 0301. So we've got like 3 weeks left. So everyone's sitting pretty. Oh, and you know what? I've been inspired. So here's what I'm going to do. Shane's project. Yeah, it's great. I like how much you've pushed that. All right, let's look at the spaceman again. Now, arm upper, let's solo that. Zoom in a little bit. Now, this part here we were missing in the past. So what I'm going to do is let's pick this color right here. So if I make a circle, I'm going to make sure nothing's selected. Just going to make a circle. And then we'll resize it later. I'll give it a solid fill. And for the color, let's just make it the color of this band right here. So we can see what's happening. And I'll call this join. This is one way. If you've got solid artwork like this, without like gradients and all that, or even sometimes when you've got gradients, you can sometimes get away with doing this. So where are we at here? Okay, so it's arm lower. All right, perfect. So I'm going to scale this down a little bit. But first, let's move the anchor point to the middle. Holding down Command or Control. That's roughly what we want. So I filled in that gap that was missing. Now look at how much more forgiveness I've got. So let's hit undo. And let's set this to the middle now and test it out. Oops. That's working a little bit better from there. Let's try from here, just for the fun of it. So that's working pretty good too. So now we've got far more range of motion there. And I didn't have to alter the artwork. I just added that circle that was the same color. And up here at the shoulders, we can do the same thing. And obviously, any joins you add into your rig, you got to parent with the other stuff. So if there's the body, I'll parent this to the body. So as the body moves around, the join moves with it. See, like that. Then just watch the rest of the rig. So for the top, right here, arm upper. So I get my join, duplicate. Just move it. Scale it up to the size it needs to be. I'll fix that. And the color we can grab from here. And let's try putting it below that arm. Okay. What's this layer? Arm upper. Okay, so let's put it below there. Okay. Now we can size it. So now I've got a little bit more give with that. And I'd probably put the anchor point more towards the shoulder. And then just move it a little bit with the rig. But this join is giving us a whole lot more flexibility. So you can see how just adding in those missing parts in After Effects saves you time. And just watch your rigging that this join moves with that arm. So hope that clears up some things. If anyone else has anything they want me to take a look at, type G in the chat for Google. How about you, Alan? Okay, and did you get my feedback about the penguin and the igloo and popping up from behind the igloo rather than fading on? It's looking really good. And so week 6, we're going to be doing particles. So that's like, one more week. And that's going to really help push some of your stuff. Like you can make it look like there's little bits of snow and ice popping up from behind the igloo popping up. It's really going to make it sing. So it's really going to help with your thing. All right. If no one else has anything to show me, I'll wrap up lab around 8. Do you have anything to work on while you're here?
I was working on it a little bit, but my computer died.
Okay, no problem. At least you got some stuff done. And it's looking good,
Yeah, maybe I'll work on it once this weekend.
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to pull yours up. And remember, like I said, this is just me giving feedback. It's not a criticism of anyone. It's just showing you things to think about and ways to push some work. So it's, it's all about learning because, that's what everyone's here for. Let's see. What was... Oops. That's the Illustrator file. I don't want that. Oh, that's funny. I didn't notice that last time. That's very clever. Very cute.
Yeah, I think I have that showing in After Effects yet.
Okay, no problem. Let's just try this just for the fun of it. So let's take a look at this real quick. Here we've got our art. What would it look like if we add some texture? Sometimes you want texture, sometimes you don't. It's really up to you as the designer. So it's like, let's find something subtle first. Let's try this. And this is where transparency and blending modes come into play to push the work. I'm going to put this over top of everything. So it covers the entire piece. We'll try that first. All right, now let's do a blending mode. See, the screen got rid of a lot of it. So now if I do T for opacity, I've got a little bit more of a wintry look. Let's drop into full res. See that? How to add some life to everything? A little bit of interest. So that was just some random texture I put over, but it completely changes the look and feel of the animation. And let's do curves. If I throw curves on that, I can adjust it even more in here. See how now we're getting back some of the artwork. A little bit less of the mist. And I could take it down a little bit more with my transparency, make it a little bit more subtle. Stuff like that. Help put a little depth into it. So, you know, it's just little things to consider. Or you could say, I only want that frosty texture on the penguin. So I could place it over the penguin, duplicate the penguin pre-comp, because if I make an alpha matte with just the penguin, so there's my texture, here's the penguin, set it to alpha matte, we're going to lose some of that, but the penguin's beneath it. See what happens if I crank up the opacity on that. The weird thing is this should be working, but it's not, which is funny. Look at that. That's much more drastic, but changes the look and feel of it instantly. It's weird how that's not working, but. And then, you know, just adding it over the sky. Changes the feel of it too. So it's really just about playing with your layer structures and stuff like that. All right. If no one else has anything to show me, I'll be stopping the stream in about 5 minutes. But, you know, like I said, what we covered in lab is just adding a little bit of texture, playing with that, playing around with blending modes. I did the joins for the astronaut. I didn't have to redo the artwork. I just added it into the artwork and just watch your layering and your parenting when you rig things. And then we also messed around with expressions, with Sarah's, and we got some more life very quickly, very easily, with a little bit of wiggle and the time and the asterisk expression. You know what? I'm not throwing in the towel yet. I'm going to show you one more thing while we're talking about texture. I'm going to make a new solid, make it black. Okay, put it on top. All right, good. Now I'm going to do fractal noise. There's fractal noise and what's the other one called? Let me find out. I'll tell you in a second. Fractal noise and turbulent noise. So I'm going to do fractal noise for this. Why not? Let's do... You'll see in a second what I'm up to here. Okay, so if I want to add a little bit of noise to her animation, it's pretty simple. So see right here, I've got very little bit. That's going to be like subtle. So if I do, say, the position. Let's try the evolution. Let me see something. So let's try wiggle. Now, if you're working at 24 frames per second, if I go 24 times a second, comma, 10,000, let's try that. What that's going to do is give you an old filmic look so that there's some noise happening every frame. If you're working 24 frames per second, if I wiggle this 24 times a second, that means every frame is going to have different noise in it. So I can always try 5,000 instead of 10,000. And let's see what that does with our noise. So let's try 12 instead of 24. And for this, let's do 500 instead of 5,000. So you can keep messing around with your expression. Let's try 12. Nope, see, we needed more than that. Now we've got a more subtle flicker. So let's try 24 again and see what that's going to do for our look. See, now I got a more jittery look instead of a faster moving one. So it's really just playing around and being experimental, because I'm not doing a whole lot of work here. I'm just messing around with a couple expressions that we've worked on. So now we'll do a blending mode. I believe multiply gets rid of white and screen gets rid of black. So there is there a little bit of animated noise over top of the animation. And if you wanted, you could always go, let's try one more thing. We could throw a tint on there. My computer's going crazy at the moment. There's my timeline. Why am I not seeing window composition? Okay, there we go. So this needs to get undocked. Put it up there just for now. All right, so where did that layer go? There's the penguin. There's the igloo. Nope. Here we go. There's our noise. If I throw tint on it, I can now change the black to a more bluish look if I wanted. Blend it into the scene a little bit more. I can even make it a little lighter if I wanted. Like such. Give it a little bit more of an old-timey feel. So it's these little embellishments you do that will drastically change your work quickly and alter the way people view it and feel about it when they look at it. You know, like I said, you're all doing the right thing. A little bit of motion each week, fine-tuning it, dialing it in. And then that's when you can get into the creative part where you just push it because you've got most of your animating done. You know, like with Sarah's character on the swing, you saw how much life we gave just by applying wiggle to the upper leg, the lower leg, and then the time asterisk expression to the shoelaces with the turbulent displace. That thing really popped very quickly. And when you go to show your work to people in studios, they'll notice those little details. The subtlety and the finesse are what's going to help your work stand out from other people who are just going for razzle dazzle. When you show a lot of deeper thought and understanding and apply the 12 principles of animation to your work, it's really going to help you. So thank you for joining me tonight. I hope you all have a great weekend. Tonight's Thursday, right? All right. And we'll be back at it Tuesday. If you've got any questions, email me. And I'll be putting this work up for everyone later on tonight. So I hope you all have a great evening.